Hi again, carrying on the veg stock and soup idea. We're now moving on to a broth. So it's a clear soup. Again, the vegetable cuts we're going to be using are brunoise today. If you look above, there's a video from Chef Tony to catch up on, which explains how to cut a brunoise. So I've got all the vegetables prepared. The big difference between the broth and the puree soup I made in the previous video. A puree soup is liquidised together, so you don't actually see the vegetables in their entirety at all. Whereas with the broth, it's the stock with the vegetables left as they are. So we need to make sure our vegetable cuts are accurate, because the customers are going to see what you've done. It's a chance to show off your knife skills. So again, I've got carrots, onion, celery and leek. I've also popped a little bit of swede in this one. We can use any vegetables that are pretty hardy, so they're not going to break down in the soup. We wouldn't go for aqueous vegetables, so you wouldn't have courgettes in there because they cook really quickly. They'll break down, they'll make the broth go cloudy. The same with potatoes. Again, by the time everything else is cooked, the potatoes are going to be disintegrated into this broth. But for a starch, we're going to use pearl barley. So a small grain, looks a little bit like a sugar puff. So we need to cook that through. The main object is the vegetables need to be cooked, the pearl barley is cooked. So I'm just going to pop a tiny bit of oil in the bottom of the pan, just to start the sweating off process. So I've got carrots going in, so a nice brunoise of carrot. We don't want to get colour on there, we're just going to sweat them off. Brunoise of onion, the swede will give a little bit of sweetness. Celery and leek going in there. We'd normally use some fresh small white turnip as well. That adds a nice pepperiness to the broth, but it's out of season, it was unavailable this morning. But if any vegetables you were putting in there, keep the brunoise, nice straightforward cuts. I'm just going to stir that around, get it started to cook off. I'm just going to pop a small pinch of salt in there at the moment. Normally we wouldn't season until near the end, but the salt is going to draw any liquid out of the vegetables we're sweating, which will help the cooking process and avoid colour, which will help it cook down a little bit. So while that's sweating down, I'm going to turn this one up. Normally a Scotch broth is just served as it is, as a soup, but we're going to, for something different, we're using up the lamb from a previous demonstration. So we're going to serve the Scotch broth as the vegetable and starch in the dish. The stock will end up being the sauce to go with it, and a nice rack of lamb. So the veg has just started sweating down, so we're adding pearl barley. I've just washed that off to get rid of any excess starch on the outside. It would make the broth go very cloudy. So that's just started softening up a little bit. So I'm going to add some stock that we made earlier in a previous video, just enough to cover. I'm going to bring that up to a rapid boil, then we're going to turn it down. So the object is we're going to just cook all the vegetables, and the pearl barley is just going to expand. We need to go by taste with the pearl barley. So it's just got a bit of texture, it doesn't want to be hard in the centre. If you overcook it, all the outer layer cracks and pops, we call it blown. Goes very fluffy and releases all the starch, which will again make the broth go really cloudy, and the pearl barley has no texture. So while that's coming up to a boil, before we simmer, I've got a hot pan there going, and I've got my best end of lamb that we trimmed in a previous show. Just going to season that up. So nice bit of salt and cracked black pepper on the skin side and the flesh side. The pan's nice and hot. I'm just going to quickly sear that, get some colour. So I'm going to sear the ends off as well. I'm going to trap all the juices in the centre. And that side. So into there I've got some rosemary and a couple of cloves of garlic as well. I'm just going to pop a little bit of our stock in there and cover with a bowl. So that's going to carry on cooking, a little bit of steaming, all the stock will evaporate, add flavour to the lamb, and that should be cooked in about 10-15 minutes. Our Scotch broth is just simmering away. Again, that should be about 15 to 20 minutes till that's cooked, and then we can assemble the dish. My Scotch broth has been simmering away for about 20 minutes. My lamb's cooked, I've left that rest for about 15 minutes as well. So we'll just check the seasoning, make sure that the pearl barley is cooked through. Brilliant. So there's just a little bit of bite left in the barley. So we're just going to season, a bit of salt, a bit of cracked black pepper, a clean spoon, lovely, so that's ready to go. So we'll serve one portion up. So normally this would be served as a soup, so it would be about 50-50 between the vegetables and the broth. For this one, because we're serving it with the lamb, I'll add more of the vegetable and a little bit less liquid. So I'm going to pop a nice pile of veg on there, a little bit of the broth to add some liquid to it. So as you can see, we've taken time on those vegetable cuts, it pays off. We can actually see all the individual different bits of vegetable in there. And I'm just going to finish that with some freshly chopped parsley, just add a little bit of bitterness to counteract the rest. And we've got our best end of lamb. So when I trim this, I left it as a 3-bone, so that way when I cut it in half, I'm going to get 2 bones and 1 bone, and we can interlink them. So cutting straight through the meat, nice and pink in the centre, crossing those over, and then just gently resting on top of the liquor. And then we're just going to pop the meat juice over there, and then just again around the edge. I don't want to cover the eye of the meat, just a little bit more freshly chopped parsley. And there we have Scotch broth with best end of lamb. Thank you very much.